Welcome, everyone. We're just going to give it a minute to make sure that everyone is joining the room. Right, we can see everyone joining the room. We're just going to wait for a minute before we kick off and start to make sure that everyone's had a chance to come in. So just welcome everyone just joining the webinar. We're going to give it another 30 seconds or so, and then I'll kick off the webinar, but we'll just give everyone a chance to come into the room. We've had loads of people sign up for this webinar, so we'll just give them a chance to come in.
Quite the crew joining.
So Sabrina, you've just asked a question. Are you on mute? Yes, all of the attendees are on mute, so you can say what you like. Right, so we will start in 10 seconds. Okay, we're going to start this webinar. Welcome, everyone. We've still got attendees entering the room, but I think we'll get going because we've got a lot to fit in to this hour. And firstly, welcome everyone to this webinar. It's going to be fun. It's going to be incredibly informative. We've got four really great tech CEOs here who are going to really impart some insight and wisdom. And I just want to invite all the attendees, if you want to put in the chat where you're dialing in from and any questions, I will do my best to make sure we kind of feed in those questions in the webinar. But first, I'd like to welcome everyone and introduce our panelists. So firstly, Marcus, would you like to go ahead and introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, thank you. I'm Marcus from Hostaway. Hostaway arranges one webinar a month, and this is the final one for the year. Just a quick update. We've seen 300% growth year over year here at Hostaway. We doubled our staff. We became preferred partners of Airbnb, Vrbo, and Booking.com, and we also launched our integration with Marriott. But most importantly, in 2021, we launched the largest marketplace in the entire vacation rental industry. We got over 100 integrated software partners, and that's why we invited 3 of them today, Breezeway, Wheelhouse, and KeyData to join us. And it's just been an amazing year. It's great that it's December because that means we get to look forward to 2022, which is going to be even better. And that's exactly what we're here to talk about today. Anyone, if you want to reach me, I'm always open. Go to Google, type in LinkedIn Marcus Hostaway. You'll find me. See you there.
Great. Thank you so much, Marcus. And thank you to Hostaway for putting on this webinar, because you guys have put all this together and it's fantastic. And we have actually just a handful shy of 900 registered for this webinar, which is really fantastic. We can see all sorts coming through in the chat. It's raining in LA, apparently. It's raining here in Bath in the UK too. But yeah, tell us where you're dialing in from. And next, Jeremy, could you please introduce yourself with that lovely moustache you have today?
Thanks for putting me on the spot. I'm Jeremy Gall. I'm the founder and CEO of Breezeway. We're a property operations and communications platform, help hosts and operators really dial in their operations, how they prepare and maintain properties to deliver a great guest experience. We're partners with Marcus and Hostaway, partners with KeyData, and great friends with Andrew at Wheelhouse. So these are some of my favorite people to, and work closely with Jessica. So some of my favorite people to spend time with, and thanks for being with us today.
Great, thank you, Jeremy. And Jason, you up next, tell us.
Yeah, good morning from down in Destin. I'm Jason, CEO of KeyDataDashboard. Great to see so many familiar faces and a huge turnout. Thank you, Marcus and Jessica, for hosting this for us. And thank you all for joining us, sneak us in between the holidays. Pretty remarkable year for us. As a lot of you know, we took on some funding about 6 months ago and have since doubled our team. And so really excited for what 2022 holds for us, and excited to talk about the industry today. Nobody I'd rather hear from than Andrew and Jeremy, and they're usually the two I call when I want to know what's going on. And so excited for the chat and appreciate the opportunity to be with you guys.
Great, thank you, Jason. And Andrew, I think it's sunny in San Francisco, where I believe you might be. So someone's saying in the chat. Tell us, so welcome, and please do a quick intro.
Sure. Great to see everyone. I'm Andrew. I run Wheelhouse. Wheelhouse is a dynamic pricing / revenue management platform. We are now very distributed, but yes, I'm based in San Francisco, enjoying a little sunshine this morning. Super excited to dive into some fun questions about particularly what next year is going to look like, and excited to be here. Thanks for hosting all.
Great, thank you. And just a reminder to attendees, please do say where you're coming in from and ask any questions that you'd like to make sure that we cover, because I will try and get that. But we're going to kick off now. And the first topic that we want to cover is trends and what you guys are seeing in the industry right now and what you're seeing for 2022. And I'm actually going to start with you, Jason. And what are you seeing from a data perspective, and what can we expect for next year?
Yeah, appreciate it. So a lot of you guys have seen the hour-long version of this. I'll give you the 2 or 3 minute version of it. And then, of course, if you want extra data, as always, hit us up. Happy to provide some more germane or specific data for your region. But I'll start with kind of US as a whole, since most of the folks we have on here seem to be from the US. Occupancy, we're looking at, first of all, January through August of 2022, kind of how the year is shaping up, spring break and summer, and of course, next few months of winter. Occupancy is up 40% for the US versus last year, looking at it from the same time frame, pacing standpoint. It's up from 15.4% versus 10.9% the previous year. So really nice outlook for, you know, everything from January through August. Very consistent uptick of around 40% in occupancy. ADR up almost 19% from 320 to 380 across the US as a whole. So some real optimism in the markets in the US in terms of what they're going to be able to get away with in terms of rates. And look, we saw some pretty significant jumps last year, as you all know, in rates. And so just continuing to push that. That brings RevPAR up 60% for the US if you look at January to August versus where we set this same time last year. So all in all, a pretty remarkable year shaping up for the US. Some specific questions we get, cancellations, of course, with the Omicron variant out, what's happening? We're really not seeing anything negative at all. Down 15% over the last couple of months versus same time last year. And so no significant trouble on the horizon as of yet. Two other ones we often get asked about, average length of stay and booking windows. No change in average length of stay in our data, lots of discussion around it, but see a really steady average length of stay. Booking windows, just a hair down for spring break versus last year, but nothing that really shows a marked change. I will note that those overall numbers in the US differ by market. We've got a couple of markets, I'll tell you, that are way up, and a couple of markets to keep an eye on. Hawaii, way up, 102 versus 37 for RevPAR. Outer Banks, doing fantastic, 112 versus 73 for same time last year on RevPAR. The Gulf Coast, which is Alabama, Florida area, 47 versus 28. The Southwest section of the US, almost double RevPAR. In Southern California, the same, 29 versus 19. Two markets that stood out to keep an eye on, New England and the Smokies, which are two that we don't usually talk about when we talk about markets that are down. So something to watch. In New England, the summer's down a good bit. The occupancy is even, but the rates are a good bit down. So curious to dig more into what's going on with rates in New England. On the Smokies, just down a little bit, 25 versus 31. Their ADR is even, but the occupancy is just a little bit down for January and February versus prior year. Of course, Europe, a different story. CDC came out as early as this week and and warned US folks about travel to France and Portugal. They got 70 plus cities on their level 4. And so our thoughts are with our friends in Europe who are still struggling with the, with COVID, and hopefully this Omicron variant will get through there quickly and they'll start to see some of what we're seeing in the US. But, overall, I do think that it continues to be a boost for the US core markets, that regrettably, the virus is still with us. It's still obviously shutting down travel internationally. It's restricting some of the travel to the urban markets and to the hotels and to the cruises. And so the overall answer for us from the data perspective is 2022 seems like it's going to be a remarkable year in the US, and we're hopeful that our friends in Europe and around the world will begin to see the same as it clears up a little bit. And I don't see that changing as we dig into 22 with kind of that lingering impact of COVID. It seems like it'll hold up at least through the spring and summer bookings, to the point where we're already have enough on the books, rates and occupancy wise, that I think we're locked in for a pretty good year here in the US.
Jason, you've just given us so much information. It's really brilliant. What a great way to start, really great way to start. Thank you. And Marcus, are you seeing similar? What anything that you want to add to that?
Yeah, thank you, Jason. That's very interesting data, and yeah, as we see for the participants, there's a lot of US here. One thing, there's actually 2 trends that we're seeing that perhaps Jason can provide more data on later. One of the segments that's doing really well is overall the luxury segment. So when we divide the nightly rates, when we look at those that cost over 1,000, their prices and occupancy have gone up substantially more than the lower cost. And that's also the markets that you mentioned, Jason, the Gulf Coast, Southern California. Those are the luxury markets. They're not the cheapest places to go at all. They have seaside, they have good views, good beaches, warm weather, and especially this time of year, they are expensive. And of course that trickles down as well. It means that the mid-range ones get booked by people who are outpriced on the luxury segment. One other trend that we're seeing really strong right now is that there's almost a new boom of individual hosts, people who buy, and this is especially true for the luxury segment, people who buy a property and manage it themselves, and do it really well. And that segment is growing really strong. So when, as Vacasa does an IPO, there's people who don't even use a property manager who are just buying their property this year. And that can be seen in real estate prices as well.
Okay, excellent, Marcus. Jeremy, are you, anything you can add to that anecdotally, talking to property managers? Because sometimes, it's always great to look at the data, but in conversations, what's troubling property managers? What are they looking forward to? Anything kind of more anecdotally that you can add to this?
Yeah, I think in combination with what Jason and Marcus were both saying, I think as RevPAR's up, you see a lot of folks focusing on optimization. And so optimization comes in a few different formats, right? Like increased efficiency, a big trend, and I think this will continue in 2022 is, labor is tough. We speak to property managers who they may have to they're limiting reservations because of staffing and just how many people they can actually bring in. And so the more efficiency you can bring to the operation, the more you can get done with the right amount of people. I think that's a big trend that's just going to continue, coupled with a real focus on quality, right? Like everyone is focused on, you've got new homeowners. Marcus just brought up like this new trend of hosts coming in. You've got a lot of new customers discovering vacation rentals for the first time. We want to capture all that by delivering a quality experience so we can keep that engagement up, right? Get these people back into the market, back to vacation rentals again in 2022, 23, 24, lifetime customers, right? And so I think focusing on that quality is a real trend that we hear managers thinking about. And I think, a lot of these new hosts, as much as we see consolidation at the top, we see a lot of new entrants into the market as well. There's a ton of new managers. I think that's a big trend in the market that we're going to continue to see, whether they're people with one home or five, or they're micro businesses, they're owning these properties, buying one, leveraging that to get another one. There's a lot of very smart young folks coming into the market. And that's very exciting.
It is. And I think that's something we have seen for a few years now. But do you think that's hotting up? That's accelerating?
I think so. I think we're seeing, right? I mean, the Airbnb IPO often gets a lot of credit for, more putting a spotlight on the industry, but I think it's true. And I think also, like, between that and then occupancy up and engagement up during the pandemic, and vacation rentals really shining as compared to hotels, that just continued to sort of like increase this flywheel. And I don't think that's going away. So it's got the attention of a lot of young people who, you see it in the news, right? People quitting their jobs in droves to start something new. Like, a lot of those people are starting property management businesses in the short-term rental space. They really are. And I think that's going to continue. And I think that's exciting that, like, you get a lot of fresh perspectives and you get a lot of new people in, whether or not there's consolidation at the top, and it makes for a better industry.
Yeah, and I just have to say, it's not all young people, as Melissa has just pointed out. It's old and middle-aged ones as well. But being middle-aged myself, I don't actually believe in that word. I don't think it really exists. But anyway, Andrew, it's a mindset, totally. Andrew, anything you can add, or anything you'd like to add? What do you see as happening now?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I partly love doing webinars as I get to learn so much. And Jason, that was encyclopedic what you just did there on the, I would actually pay for a reading from you every day, the kind of world report. So I think, one thing I was kind of reflecting on when we were putting together this panel, we were thinking about calling it 4 Big Opportunities for Vacation Rentals. And then we changed the title to 4 Big Opportunities for Short-Term Rentals. And I think the other really interesting trend that it hasn't been quite addressed yet is really strong performance from furnished mid-length stays, particularly in urban areas, and a lot of investment and excitement from traditional real estate companies and others who are saying, okay, short-term rentals were a little scary in our multifamily building. Mid-length rentals are really cool. And I think, next year we might be not calling the short-term rental discussion, just the rental conversation, right? And I think whether it's new people starting businesses, Jeremy, to your point, whether it's the real growth of mid-length stay, obviously vacation rentals doing so well, it's such an interesting time in our industry. And I think for folks paying attention to mid-length stay, I think it could be a new opportunity when slower times return, or during low season. These mid-length stays are kind of a new product that I think is really interesting to think about for folks.
Great, thank you. And someone said they just missed the beginning of Jason's comments. I'm not going to get you to re-say it all, Jason, and just to let everyone know that the recording of this will be available, and you will be able to watch it back again. Now, I want us to kind of move on to a topic that kind of has an umbrella term of money, but covers, quite a few bits. And obviously, there was some big news that happened in the industry on Tuesday with Vacasa, and there's lots of I want to talk to you all about not just what's going on in the market and those big stories, but also how property managers can look to either acquire or be acquired, if that's in their thinking right now. So go into that. And I Skift wrote about the Vacasa IPO, and Dennis there said something along the lines of, now is the time of the mega manager. And I want to know whether you think that's a correct way of looking at things. But firstly, what are your kind of views on consolidation, views on Vacasa? Jason, do you want to start on this?
Yeah, sure, happy to. And a shout out to the Olin team who keeps me updated on the latest M&A stuff, and Ben does a good job as well. A lot of you guys know those folks, but yeah, I mean, we hear a lot of the same things kind of across the vendor space and across these M&A guys, and it seems like it's as hot a market as ever in terms of M&A activity. There's I'll call it an anxiousness, but I don't mean it in a bad way, amongst PMs in terms of their inquisitiveness of whether or not this is a good time to be selling, right? Should they be thinking about selling in order to maximize their return just because it's been a phenomenal year from a revenue perspective, or because things are changing and they're curious as to whether or not it will be more difficult to kind of stay in the game as these mega operators come into play, as you call them, Jessica. And I think kind of the consistent voice I'm hearing is, look, it was a phenomenal year, right? Most of the PMs that we work with, their revenue and their EBITDA are up tremendously historically. Even if you've got companies that had no business development growth, they made a lot more money last year because we were able to push rates and occupancy. I think the consensus is a lot of that will stick, but it could be a phenomenal year to sell. And so the question is, what are you seeing in terms of the M&A multiples that people are getting? Is that being adjusted downward for? In other words, are the buyers saying like, well, we're not going to give you a full boat on last year because it was such a remarkable year? And what we're hearing is the multiples are actually up. I think the exception for that is the eager 30 to 50 unit company that is really just beginning to form a solid company in terms of a larger sale opportunity, looking for great multiples. I don't think that's necessarily there in terms of what we're seeing. But when you get to that 100 unit and up type of client, and you get certainly into the higher EBITDAs, the 3 million and up, or even 2 million and up, well, I am hearing reports that you're seeing a lot better multiples than we've seen historically. And you would almost even expect the opposite of that there would be a downward adjustment because of the success from a revenue perspective. And so, look, when you got a better multiple and a better number to multiply it by, it's not a bad opportunity to think about, what your company is worth, in my opinion. We're hearing average multiples for those 3 million and up companies, or those 100 unit and up companies, in the 6 to 7 range, which is higher than I've heard. I've always, seen 4.5 to 5.5 kind of as that midline number. Also seeing some changes in the way the deals are structured. I think we're still hearing as much ever in terms of just what I call money coming into the space, right? Private equity interest in the space. Everybody kind of watched as that Village deal went through with a really nice multiple, but you had a zillion people bidding on that. Private equities, VCs, larger brands, and only one got to buy them, and the rest of them are still looking. And so, from a structured standpoint, we're hearing that there's still a huge appetite for really well-run companies, but the companies that are coming in to buy, a lot of these, private equity type companies, they have high expectations in terms of due diligence, something more than if I was a small vacation rental company buying another vacation rental company from Germany. The private equity guys come in and they want quality of earnings checks and bigger legal due diligence. And so I think what we're hearing is, like, if you're in the mood to sell and you're trying to capitalize on it, now more than ever, it's important to be as sophisticated as you can, or as you can be, and to really have your accounting tight and to really have your legal tight. The expectations of what a quality company looks like in the vacation rental space is growing as these more mature players are coming into our space. And I think we're keeping up with it. But if you're leaning towards selling, I'd put it on your radar to double down on kind of that legal accounting side. But it's a hot market, I guess, is the short summary. And I think the money's here to stay for a little while.
Hey, Jason, Jessica, can I hop in real quick with a question?
Yeah.
Jason, you mentioned the Olin's C2G advisors. If someone was looking to sell, what should they be thinking about? Who's the first few people you'd call?
Man, I've used Owens in my deals in the past. I've got a long-standing relationship with them. Also got a deep friendship with Ben Edwards, who's been selling in the space for a while. And I think most of the deals historically have been done by those two, both deeply knowledgeable about the space. I typically pick up the phone and call either one of them to get a sense, and they usually have very similar, anecdotal information, and both highly respected. Venturi is a new entry into the space in terms of M&A, increasingly doing more deals. I'm not as close to what their last couple of deals have looked like, but I know they're a new place in the space. So those are really the three primary ones that I consistently hear about.
Yep.
Thank you. And Marcus, I know you were actually at Focusrite recently. What, in a sort of broader picture of consolidation, etc., what are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, so to continue on Jason's, thanks for the very good insights on the property management space. Focusrite is a travel tech conference, but it's mostly focused on the umbrella term money. It's mostly investors there, to be honest. And what was really shocking, at least for me personally, was how the travel space overall is suffering right now, because we're in a bubble here with vacation rentals, because of course everyone wants to go to a vacation rental, but how many people can almost say that they've been on 5 business trips every month across the globe in the last 18 months? I don't think a lot have. How many have been on a cruise ship? Not many. How many have taken a tour in China? Not many. And there's so the conference was a bit depressing. But what was really interesting is I found out why the multiples are so high in the vacation rental space. And that's because no matter what the business, whether you're a marketplace like Airbnb, technology providers like we have here, or property manager, there is a lot of money. Money hasn't disappeared. And in fact, there's even more money than before, but because the activities themselves are missing. You know, the business travelers are not there. The cruise ships are half empty. That money is trying to find wherever there is activity, and that's vacation rentals. And this is why we're seeing so many consolidations taking place in the industry. This is why we're seeing so many investors who are big on travel in general, putting money into tech startups, into property managers. It's quite easy as a property managers these days, especially this year, to raise capital, because the growth is there, and there's not a lot of competition, because this money has to go somewhere. If it's allocated to travel, there's only so much you can do in the cruise ship space. There's only so much you can do in the, let's say, space travel space. But vacation rentals is right here, right now. It's growing and it's existing. And of course, for those wondering, is it a bubble? I would just say this, that in most industries, there are synergies. So let's say vacation rentals, you have synergies with airlines. If people travel, then people go to vacation rentals. Same thing with restaurants. And right now, a lot of these industries that live next to us, like restaurants and airlines, they're not having a good time. But when those come back, I don't think that business will be removed from our industry. I think, in fact, the cake overall will get bigger, and our share will also grow.
Okay, thank you. So it's a really interesting time, isn't it? And Andrew, when I was speaking with you, we had a call earlier in the week, and you said something that I've written down, and it's, if you're growing your business, you're going along doing your business, don't execute brilliantly to just a dead end. Like, have a goal in mind, whether it's acquiring, to acquire, or to be acquired. Can you kind of lead us a little bit on that?
Yeah, we were talking a little bit about how, regardless of whether you want to sell your business or build your business, when there is a period of consolidation, it's just really important to kind of stay abreast of what's happening. Because if you make the decision not to be bought, but your competitor does, and that competitor all of a sudden has a lot of resources, et cetera, maybe tries to poach talent, there are just ramifications whenever there's a time of consolidation. So what I was suggesting, I think it's always, we were talking earlier about starting businesses. It's much easier to start a business than to sell a business or to exit a business. And I think you want to, as much as possible, execute with a plan. And it's easy right now to think about, like, it is high times. And I do think we're seeing massive cyclical changes in where people stay. And I think it's going to be good times in our space for a while. But I do think that because there's consolidation, because there's so much private equity money coming in, because major real estate groups and hotel groups, it's not like they're sitting on the sidelines. They're seeing this demand, and they know that this space is no longer the alternative inventory space anymore. Alternative is mainstream. So I just think it's important for folks to, I don't want to scare anyone, like, obviously, like, execute your business and your plan, but like, it's good to make friends with Jacoby, the Olins, and C2G, and Ben Edwards, and others. It's good to just have those people in your network and reach out to them. So I think what we were talking about a little bit was kind of having a plan, even if it isn't even if it isn't plan A, have a plan B, and that might mean learning what's going on in the market, knowing who to call should situations change, and being prepared.
Thank you. And Jeremy, you have successfully sold a business in the past. Anything you can kind of add? You know, having obviously it wasn't a property management company, it was FlipKey, but you've gone through the process. You know, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think building again off Andrew, I think Andrew's right on target, right? You have to have a plan. And if your plan is just to exit, you should rethink a couple of steps ahead of that, because that's a dangerous path if that's your only plan. Execute to the midline goals that are going to help you get there to build a great business, because that's what people are trying to acquire, right? They're trying to acquire a great business where you've put the time into culture and people. If you listen to the folks from Vacasa, or you listen to Steve Milo talk about what they buy, like they're buying culture and people, they're buying process, they're buying buttoned up businesses that are well operated and well run, right? And like, if you focus on doing that, you'll hit your goals, whether you're bound to sell to someone or not. And I think that's really what it's about. And we can become pretty enamored with what the multiple is and what we can do, and if we only get to this point, then we can sell it and then we can go do something else. But you really have to think about the steps ahead of time before you get there, or else it's very hard. This is an execution business. Like, whether you're in technology, whether you're a PE person, whether you're a property manager, we're all trying to do the same thing. We're all trying to execute to our business goals. And I think that's the most important thing to keep in mind. And when it comes to the mega manager, I think like, all things must pass. It's a really cyclical world that we live in. And Vacasa's done some really special things and can be a very, very, and likely has proven to be a successful business and will continue to do so. We all hope so, right? It's great for the industry. But in doing that, still be such a small fraction of this massive market of fragmented property managers. So like, I just don't know. I don't really think this is the time of the mega manager to take a contrarian view. It's like, it's kind of always been that time, right? Whether it was Resort Quest or somebody else, like it's always been that time. And there's always a place for that. Just like in long-term, there's a place for Avalon and Greystar, and then there's a place for, 200, 300,000 other like really small property managers who run great businesses at a local level and compete with national brands.
That's a really great point. There is room for all. Now, I want to move on, and I want to talk about, I'm going to ask you all a question, and I was going to save this for the end, but I'm going to do this now. And I want you all to imagine that on January the 1st, because we're going into a new year, that you are going to start up a property management business. And I want you to tell me, or tell us, where would you start that business, and what are the 3 things that you would focus on from January the 1st? And Jeremy, as you're right on my screen, I'm actually going to start with you. So January 1st, you're about to, you get a little bit of time off to get over your hangover and stuff, but then you're about to start your business. Where is it, and what are the 3 things you'd focus on?
A dangerous question when you first asked all the attendees to tell us where they're from. So I don't have enough time to scroll through and pick the right location that's gonna hit the right number of audiences. So I think I have an affiliation with South Carolina and with those markets. So I would probably start a business in the South Carolina market, in or around the Charleston market, try to take advantage of like some of the urban trends and like the traditional vacation rental trends. And I think you could build a great brand there. I think there's just tons of room, and it's an awesome market to live and work in. So I'd probably pick there. And I think 3 things that I'd focus on in this order, I think, would be 1, culture and people. As you're building that business, or if you're acquiring a business, how do you build up that culture and like really focus day 1, culture and people, making sure I've got the right team and people who are really excited to kick ass and do all the work that's necessary to execute and build a great business. 2, data and process, like how are we leveraging our data? What do we have? What don't we have? And then every step of the way. Like you got to be, this is a process over and over and over again business. That's what property management is, over and over and over again. It's like 1,000 little steps every day to execute on your business, and like making sure you've got it dialed in and you've got the right tools and process to leverage and use is critical. There's no other, I don't see any other way to be successful. And then last, like you serve your owners so well, right? Like your owner management and asset management, that's your business. They're your supply lifeline. You can work so hard on demand, but if you don't have the supply, you're in big, big trouble. And I'd focus third on asset management and what services I'm really delivering to my owners and how confident I feel in that and how I can really bust that open and deliver more.
Great. Thank you, Jeremy. And I'm going to move on to you, Marcus. And when I say, where would you do it? I'm going to broaden that to what kinds of properties, or what, differences perhaps in lengths of stay, or different types of personas that you'd market to as well. So Marcus, what would it be? And then what are the 3 things that you would focus on?
Well, first of all, based on Jason's data there, which very much coincides with us, I would not start it in the US at all. It would probably be nearby. Canada's real estate market is quite stressed, but there is a country south here called Mexico. I would definitely go there. I don't know much about, I haven't visited all the areas there, but probably something within a short flight. When starting any business, I do a lot of mentoring for other startups, and there's only 3 things you need. There's KPIs, KPIs, and KPIs. What you said, the culture and people, I fully agree with that. If you don't get the right culture and people, the business will never succeed. But at least from my experience, it goes the other way around. You have the right numbers that you're tracking, and when you're able to know what it is that needs to be done to get those numbers in place, you're able to hire people who can share that culture that you're creating. When it comes to the type of properties, I would not branch out. This is something that we see constantly with our clients that we work with. They start with one type of properties and then they add on different types, and they find out that there's a lot of different procedure. For example, the sizes of the units, the number of guests, the usage, and the location can also determine a lot of factors like nightly rates. So just go with one type to start. And if you can't get 20 units with one particular type in mind, then you probably didn't do the research before starting.
Thanks, Marcus. And I'm going to move to you, Andrew. Do you want to tell us what you would focus on? Those 3 things?
3 things in building business. Well, first of all, I would say I am extremely excited about the mid-length stay, and I think the digital nomad trend is here to stay. So I would probably, as opposed to a location like you kind of gave us freedom to branch out from that, Jessica, I would say I would focus on properties that had an amazing space to work, were near a great places to bike, but that's just what I love. But I think that's the fastest growing sport in America, at least, is mountain biking right now. And I think adventure travel is definitely in good, healthy living. So I would say I'd look for a lot of places that had good Wi-Fi, good workspaces, good kitchens, and good adventure capabilities right nearby. I think those are all cyclical, long-term things where people can come and live for a couple of weeks. And in terms of what I would focus on day one, I think we've talked about it. Great team, start there. Build what you know, right? You're basically, whether you're working with owners or guests or whoever, you are the brand. So it's easiest to build a brand that is really reflective of you. So whatever you love and whatever kind of you're naturally drawn to is a really safe spot to start. That's gonna be my only. So team, and then build you into a brand.
Great, thank you. And I feel, Jason, that you can probably cheat because you have got all the data. But tell us what you would do, and particularly the 3 things that you would focus on if you're starting out, property manager, January 1st. What would you do?
I think in terms of a location first, obviously I would cheat and look at my data, but absent that, I would, I would focus. I'm a huge fan of luxury brands with nice margins, because I think you can just choose to deliver over the top extraordinary service, which costs money, and still have a fantastic margin. I think there's always room for somebody to do something better than anybody else. So I would probably look for a market that has the capacity for a lot of growth on the luxury side and isn't currently being serviced with what I think of as an over the top service company, and try to sneak in. I would probably try to buy somebody, quite honestly, because I think it's hard to build a brand from the ground up without being dependent upon the OTAs on day one now. But I agree with what the other panelists said, particularly Jeremy's comment about business. Like, I'd work backwards. I know what M&A companies are looking for. They're looking for really well-run businesses with really strong processes and good, solid people. And I think there's a lot of room for that in the market. There's some remarkable businesses out there, but there's a lot of remarkable markets out there that could still use like a really strong operator who's just over the top focused on quality business. And so I would just come in with, a relentless pursuit to deliver over the top service, and I think it'll serve you well.
Great, thank you. And I think we've got 40 minutes, and I don't think we've used the word technology yet in this webinar. And considering all four of you run technology companies, and you obviously work with lots of property managers, lots of successful property managers, kind of trying to sort of avoid your own solution. What are you seeing? Because also I know that a lot of property managers can get confused about, what do I use? What do I need? How does it all kind of fit together? And so can you tell us about, based on what you know about the market, what you know about your fast growing, successful property managers that you guys work with, what are they using, and what's changing around the way that they're using technology? And what do you think we'll see more of in 2022? And who wants to start on that? Maybe Andrew, do you want to kick us off? You're smiling.
I want to chew on this question a little bit more. Someone else can go first, please.
Yeah. Okay, Marcus.
Sure, I'll go first. First of all, there's two trends that have really set off the automations, and there's two specific areas that have been automated that were often not automated a few years ago. One of them is anything related to guest verification, making sure that they have the right credit cards, the right IDs, the right people coming there. And the other one is anything related to access, so remote locks or different solutions. So that was initiated by COVID. People didn't want or couldn't even meet in person, but now it's it's accelerated by staff shortages. So these two are really strong trends right now, where property managers who have automated everything else and still doing these things manually are looking to automate. One overall trend that I could say also with the background of the conferences that I've been to this year, connectivity and integrations is going to be absolutely everything. It doesn't matter what you're providing to the market, you need to be connected to the right partners, because without that, the space is moving very fast right now, and it's going to move even faster because there's going to be a large infusion of capital coming to especially the technology space. Now, what that means is that the way we look at the different categories of tools, like I just mentioned, guest verification as a category, that will all change in the coming years. There will come new things, and if you want to be a part of it, you better make sure that you're connected to it. And if you're a property manager out there using a tool, whatever that tool is doing, it might be old next year. But if they have the right partners in their network, and you can utilize those instead, those partners will be up to date.
Thank you. We've just had a question from Harvey about what does the role of artificial intelligence play in the travel industry and in the vacation rental industry? Where are we on the scale? Marcus, do you want to answer that one? Are we on the scale?
I'll give a short answer. I can only say that most companies that advertise using the term AI actually do nothing related to AI. And I haven't seen a single AI-based company in the travel space just yet. Well, in the travel space, yes, but nothing even remotely close to vacation rentals. Maybe someone else has seen some examples of true AI.
No, I usually think that our space is doing a good job of using machine learning. I'm not super close or aware of really strong uses of artificial intelligence in our space. But I would say machine learning, which is really kind of statistics, is almost like a branch of statistics, right? I would say it's safely being used in our category, but I'm chewing on what AI might be available. Jessica, on the technology side, I think just a quick thing I was chewing on here was I'm really excited about, and I actually think this could benefit a lot of property managers, software that helps drive ancillary revenue, because I think that's still such an underdeveloped aspect of the short-term rental space. And like we've got all these big properties or buildings that we could theoretically monetize much better, and hotels obviously do a very good job of monetizing not only their space but their time, the time that guests stay with them. So I'm really interested in studying more this coming year, ancillary, how to drive ancillary from properties. I'm interested in kind of investing in that. And I actually think that property managers would be wise to do it too, just because if you can bring a differentiated case to an ownership group and say, hey, look, we're good at selling the space, but we have this other revenue stream that we've started to figure out how to derive through operations or technology or whatever it may be. I think that's going to be a really interesting sell point moving forward, and interested to see that evolve more in 2022.
Thank you. And Jeremy, do you have anything to add here?
I do, not surprisingly. I think ancillary revenue when you're in the property management space, equates to service. Like that is what you do. Like that's how you make more money. I think there's a big trend towards service and offering more services, which opens up that ancillary revenue. Totally agree with Andrew. And I think that what I don't see in 2022 too much of these revolutionary, massive jumps in these trends, especially when it comes to technology. I think we've been on this up and to the right trajectory and trend for technology adoption and usage and improvements and value creation to clients and to the market for quite a long time. And I think it's just going to continue. That trend is just another step up in that same direction. And some of that is more automation, more service leading to ancillary revenue, more adoption of keyless entry. People have been making that move for quite some time. It's just becoming more important. So the trend is just that the way technology can impact your business is becoming more, it's increased, it's more impactful. So now keyless entry is even more important than it was 2 years ago. So adoption cranks up a little bit, and it just makes that trend continue. And I think we'll see a lot more of that in 2022.
And I know that at Breezeway, you're doing a survey, your property operations report survey, and there's questions around tech stacks, and it'll be interesting to see what the results are and what the changes next year around that. I'm going to jump to a question that's in the chat that I think might be helpful for some of the managers watching this. And Pierce from I think North Carolina, so Outer Banks, has asked, what indicators would you recommend for those of us who might be pricing homes for 2023? So, next year, fine, but actually, as we all know, demand is crazy. People are booking, that far in advance. They want to make sure they get the right pricing. I'm kind of thinking this is an Andrew Jason question here, but what would you recommend for thinking that far ahead?
Yeah, Jason, let's both give our 2 cents here. I would say if you're trying to predict pricing for 2023, it's essentially impossible right now. The reason for that now is that good revenue management systems, good dynamic pricing systems are very reactive and responsive to demand trends. And right now there's not going to be enough in most markets. There's not going to be enough activity on the books to really price 2023 in any accurate sort of way. A good defensive mechanism is, and I don't think this is part of the question, but a good defensive mechanism is to price the future higher. Just so if someone's looking to book, when all places are available, they choose yours. It means there's it's a safe time to raise rates. I think in terms of probably what the question is getting at is if the market slows down a little bit, what are we going to, how is pricing going to be impacted? And to that, like the biggest moving question in my mind is, because there's so much investment in this space, is how much is supply changing in your market and how much demand persists? And those are really things Jason probably knows, since he read that amazing report at the start of this, but I don't know what 2023 is looking like yet. And it's best to kind of use softwares where you can see the data or automate your pricing in a way that kind of helps you respond to the changes in demand automatically.
Thank you. Jason?
Yeah, I'll add to that. I mean, Pierce is in a unique market, right? Where he's in the Outer Banks of North Carolina, where you've got houses that sleep, on average, whatever, 15, 25 people. And so they look to book those way in advance because it's hard to get your 37 cousins all in line on where you want to go. And so I do think you see markets like that having to price out very far in advance. And I share Andrew's sentiment, which is, the great thing about vacation rentals is people become attached to a particular home and they have a deep loyalty to those homes. I think in many cases, because you don't want to disappoint your 27 cousins and they were happy with the house last year, right? So there's a risk factor. And so they're willing to pay to be able to guarantee that same home. And so for me, if somebody's booking 2023 this far out, then they have a high demand for that, that unique house, even though there may be a lot of supply in the space. I think they want that home. And it's indicative of why they're booking so far out. I would keep the prices up where they are right now, even though we've got, incredibly high prices historically over the last 2 years. And so I would do what Andrew did. I would price aggressively for now. I wouldn't push them substantially higher than what we're seeing this year. But I would put them out there, and the people who want to book, let them book. And the data will start to teach us as we go through the next couple of months, whether that's something you can hold to or whether you need to back off a little bit.
Great answer.
Thank you.
To put you guys to follow up on that for a second though, like, isn't it interesting, right? Like, I think there's concern in the market. We saw this at some of the conferences this year where people were concerned that some of the lift that we'd seen from vacation rentals in 2021, that 2022 might be down to 2022 might not look like 2021. It might look more like 2019, right? And so somewhere along the line, early next year, what are a couple indicators that people would look at, like repeat guests, percentage of repeat guests, or like the booking window? What are a couple things that they would look at to try and gauge and get an early sense, like what's going to happen end of 2022 and into 2023? Are we staying at this elevated rate, or are we kind of moving down?
I mean, I think
sorry, go ahead, Jess.
I was just going to say real quick, I think that question kind of got pushed back a year or 9 months anyway, right? Which it's now is it's 2023 going to be where it slowed down. And, I would avoid necessarily looking at it as a specific year, right? Like it's a rolling, whatever, forward 6 months or forward 9 months. And I think because we've got this beautifully long booking window historically, we can kind of see 6-9 months into the future pretty well. And so if we keep an eye on pacing, we can tell when the pacing starts to pull off way early, far enough along to adjust. And so I wouldn't necessarily look at it as late 2022 or 2023. I would keep an eye forward on that 6 to 9 month pacing data and say, hey, is it still hot, or when does it start to slowly decline? I mean, right now the expectations are that it's hot and it'll stay hot for a little while. But I think as cruises open up and God willing, Europe and the rest of the world open up more and people start to travel, I do think it'll pull back some. And the data, I think, will tell us way in advance how much. And so I think as long as you're keeping an eye on it, it's not so much what does the change mean? It's are you optimizing what you're doing with what's happening around you, right? You can't control what's going to happen. You can just control how you price off of.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Andrew.
Yeah, I would say you can always look at a kind of a pacing curve for a market, like Jason's saying. You're gonna see it, whether that pacing curve is holding to kind of a predicted level of occupancy or whether it's ahead or behind. So you will be able to see far in the future how the booking curve is developing. There is data for that. There is software for that. But I think like the true interesting question that we're all chewing on, or one of the interesting questions for the industry is, I still think there's been a paradigm shift, right? I don't think a lot of travelers are going to flood back to hotels. I think a lot of people are betting that this is it's a kind of a new era. I totally agree, Jason, with your point around, invest in luxury right now. I still think there's going to be big luxury brands that will be built in many markets. So yes, 2023 could be slower than 2022. I agree, Jason, that the window's been pushed back. We're gonna have a strong year, but I still think in 2 years we'll be talking about how ironic was it that COVID was the great unlocking of the short-term rental space as the dominant hospitality asset, and I think that's so cool. So I think we should all be aware and looking at data, but I do think I'm really excited about continuing investment in the space and growth in the space. And I think the real fun actually in short-term rentals starts with, with the way automation is going. I think the real fun is still 3 to 5 years out from when everything kind of all comes together.
Absolutely. It still feels like it's starting, it's the beginning still, there's a lot of maturing that can still happen. Now we're coming near the end, but I think we can go over a little bit, but we've had loads of questions. So I'm going to start to ask some of the questions that the attendees have asked, and then we can do quite short answers to them. And here's one that so I'll do some of them that are in the Q&A and some that are in the chat. And, Harvey has asked, how do you guard against fraud while using online platforms to make bookings from guests using stolen cards? How to deal with more and more chargebacks from the banks and even avoid this happening? Anyone want to answer that one? Marcus, was that you?
Yeah, absolutely. So first of all, there's a lot of technology. You don't even need to be a Hostaway customer. Just go on the Hostaway marketplace and look at guest verification. There's a lot of tools available for that. But I said the most important thing is not that you actually ask the guests to go through these hoops. And when I say hoops, they're the same hoops that you need when you check into a hotel. When you go there, they look at your face, they ask you for your ID or driver's license, passport, they ask you for your credit card. And then they check the name on the credit card, they check the name on the ID, and check on your face. You have to jump through these hoops just to get into your room. At any hotel, anywhere in the world, they do the same thing. Now, that's exactly what you need to do in vacation rentals as well. And there's many tools on our marketplace that help with that. But the nice thing is you don't actually have to use these tools. It's enough that you tell the guest, hey, you're going to book here. You need to have a credit card that matches your ID, and your ID needs to match your face. If you don't have that, you can't get in. That in itself, you don't actually have to do that. That will remove 99% of the problems. Just as long as everyone knows before booking and after booking that they have to provide these 3 very standard things that every hotel in the world requires.
Thank you, Marcus. Now we've got a question from David Holmes. Jason, do you have any data on Australia? We're looking at 90% occupancy for the next 3 months coming out of COVID lockdowns, trying to see what the future holds. We also had somebody ask the same question, similar question, although possibly not the 90% occupancy bit for the UK. And you might not have it right here, but how do we find that data?
Yeah, great question. UK looks great, by the way. I shot a response back on it. I'll pull Australia up. If you come back to me in about 3 minutes, I'll tell you what that data looks like. And then anybody can reach out to me and happy to point you in the right direction as well.
Thank you. And we have had a question from Tasha Garber. So this goes back to technology. Besides access, verification, value add revenue, what are you seeing in-stay technology, the kind of prop tech, smart home tech? What are you seeing and what do you expect to see more of? I added the last bit.
I think we're seeing a lot more. Like, I think the guest communication tools and the technology around guest communication are just getting better and better to help, the right mix of automation and personalization so that you can be reactive to guests. And like Andrew was saying, like, if you want to open up ancillary revenue, like that guest communication, that's your key piece of it. And I think that technology is going to get better and better and better. And that's a big piece of it.
Okay. Thank you. And
So Leslie Bills has said, do you think it is vital to have short-term rental software to combine all channels to one platform? Perhaps Marcus, can you answer that one?
Yeah, I was actually typing the answer. I wanted to say that it depends on the scale of the operation. If we're talking about purely synchronizing the calendars, if you're fully booked, you're not going to get another booking, so you don't need to worry too much about that. But I'd also like to mention that the current trend with the OTAs or the channels is that they prefer to work with technology providers. And as a result of that, quite often when they roll out, especially the bigger changes, they roll it out to their technology partners first. I mean, even within those technology partners, such as Hostaway, and there's a limited amount of users that get access to the new feature or the new filter. Now, what that means is that if you're using a technology like that, you're able to market your property when let's say Airbnb goes and change something, you are able to utilize that before others, and same goes for all the OTAs. And that's for that reason alone, I would suggest using a connectivity provider. That's what they're called. But of course, not every connectivity provider is built the same. So if they are not developing fast and growing, then they're not going to be supporting that latest feature. So then you're probably better off without any provider at all, especially if you have less than 5 properties.
Thank you, Marcus. And Jason, I just see that you've got some Australia data now. Do you mean right now in front of you?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, go.
Yeah, I was just gonna say Australia looks strong. RevPAR is up considerably for the first 8 months of the year, and that's principally driven by higher rates in the summer. Real significant jump from kind of the 325 to 400 range for our average room rate per night for summer. So it looks, I mean, occupancy is up a little bit, but looks like the PMs in the market are feeling pretty optimistic and pressing rates, and it's resulting in a higher ADR, or excuse me, RevPAR.
Thank you, and appreciate you finding that. We're going to go a couple of minutes over, and just several people have asked, are we sharing this recording? And yes, this recording will be shared. And Jeremy, here's a question for you about Breezeway. Are you guys, oh, I have to find it, I've lost it there. Are you guys creating an automated notification to property owners when their clean is happening? Is this something in the roadmap, or is this anything that you can?
Yeah, I think that's interesting. There's a workaround depending on how much information you want to share with your property owner, where you could clue them in on that notification now when that clean is happening. But I think what's more interesting, so it's on our roadmap and it's on our radar. I think what's even more interesting about this question though is like the concept of owners wanting to have more transparency about the service that's happening at their property. I mean, peel back this question for a second. It's like, how are we going to tell our owners that we're actually cleaning their property right now? Like, it's wild, right? And I think it's really interesting, and it's indicative of, as you see more and more homeowners that want to come in, they're coming into the market, they're new, they might try this on their own, then they figure out that it's really hard, but they're like, wow, I used to do this, now I really want to use a manager, I want some info, I want to know what I'm paying for, really want to understand like what my management fees are going to, and I want to be clued into all the work you're doing. We're taking on a lot of that work to build transparency through reporting with owners. And I think I think there's a lot of value to create there that can help managers with their clients. Great question.
Thank you. Thank you. And we've got a statement here. It's not actually a question, but it's what a property manager is currently doing in order to make that extra revenue that we talked about earlier. And Lauren Madewell has said, we now charge for early check-ins and late checkouts. We are considering the mid-stay cleans. Of course, we do pet fees. We're always brainstorming more add-ons, but it's difficult to balance that without eating away at our time spent inspecting working cabins. And this question from Sebastian Rivas, I think it's a really important question to start off on the right foot. And actually, if you guys are all starting your property management company on January 1st, you might want to think about this. How important is it to build your own booking portal and brand for a new property manager? Who wants to go for that one? Marcus, do you want to go for that one?
Yeah, I'd say it's crucial. Of course, it depends, first of all, on your edge. If you're the only one offering luxury rentals in Tulum, then obviously you're going to have direct bookings right from the start, because people who search for luxury rentals in Tulum, Mexico, they will find luxury rentals tulummexico.com, which is your own website. But if you're operating in space where you have many different type of properties in many different locations, and there's many other companies who do that as well, then it will be very, very hard for people to find you. But regardless, you should start building that brand, because we've seen a tremendous increase in direct bookings, up 130% year over year. And that's simply because the guests, they are wary of using services like the OTAs, but at the same time, a lot of places are fully rented out until you actually pick up the phone and talk to the property manager. And then you find out that, oh, wait, yeah, we got this one place. It's where the TV isn't working, so we're not renting it out. Okay, but I can stay without the TV. Yeah, okay, we'll open it up for 2 weeks. So I would definitely go and build a website right from the start.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask one more and then we will draw to an end, because I'm conscious that people might have other things to get to. But a question from Tom Y is, are there any, I think this is an interesting question, are there any tools to measure listing performance KPIs for softer factors such as photos, photo order, or listing descriptions? I mean, I would say just testing is just testing, isn't it? But somebody else might have a better answer to that. Anyone know? Is there a way of monitoring that KPI performance on those softer factors?
I don't think there's anything on the market yet, but I would look for it this year. I know several of us are working on it. And so I would expect tools all the way down to for rent by owners, which is a big push for us this year, to give you better insights into what types of things drive your overall performance. Like, does it help to have a grill, or does it help to have better photos? You know, what are the, you know, like he said, the soft factors that really drive differences in prices? And you got to look at some pretty massive data sets to see, does it really make a difference? And we'll try to get some of that data out there. But no, I'm not aware of an existing tool that does a good job of it yet. So stand by, I guess, is the answer.
Yeah, it'd be really great to have something like that. Right, so we've gone over 5 minutes past. I just want to thank you, all four of you, for sharing so much great insight. It's been a really brilliant panel. You can tell that by all the engagement and the questions. And just to remind everyone that this recording will be available. The Hostaway team will be sharing it on their social channels. And a big thank you also to Hostaway for hosting this. It's been, you know, a lot of work goes into putting these things on, and it's really wonderful that you do this for the industry. So thank you very much, and thank you to Jeremy, Jason, Andrew, and also to you, Marcus. Thank you very much, and also to all the attendees. Thank you for your questions and for listening, I guess. So and wishing everyone a great end of 2021 and a really successful 2022. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. See you next month.
Thanks. Great job hosting, Jessica. Love it. See you all.